Oh my God, the US Treasury bought back 785 million of their own debt on Thursday. The markets rallied Friday on top of OPEX when a bunch of puts were expiring, when people were taking profits and market makers were delta hedging, buying back the S&P 500. Oh my God, the bottom is in. Guys, also, the S&P 500 had the highest put volume, the second largest ever recorded on Thursday, which usually occurs near bottoms, which is actually true. And the last 4 days of VIX flows shows that people were letting go of their VIX calls, indicating that they don't see volatility ahead for the market, which is also technically bullish. However, we also seen more insider selling over at Amazon of about 20,000 shares, which could be routine selling ahead of tax season or something else along the lines of that, maybe some rebalancing. But we also saw Citi take off their S&P 500 long trade after Nvidia's failure to reignite quote unquote animal spirits. Speaking of that, Nvidia just came out and reportedly admitted that they were working to help the US to avoid a recession. How are they doing that? Well, in my opinion, obviously cooking the books. I don't know why they would come out and even say that. We are also seeing on-chain volume drop for all stablecoins, which will have an implication we'll talk about in a second. Spot Bitcoin ETF volume hitting a new all-time high, as well as Bitcoin falling below the average ETF cost basis. And this is the first time in 2025 that we have seen that. Now, the huge elephant in the room is what Bank of Japan just announced. So watch the video until the end, like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're going to do some SPY analysis heading into the week ahead. I do still hold my January puts on the overall market, and I will explain why. Guys, if you're new to the channel, welcome to the channel. Lottery stocks, you can see it right here. We've been around 5 years fighting market corruption, teaching people how to make money in these markets and navigate through these markets. I appreciate all the support. Let's get into it. So first of all, our take has recently been a slight bearish bias on the market. We've been trading in this descending parallel channel, but let's talk about the elephant in the room. Very recently, we have seen some stress in the repo markets, indicating that liquidity was thin. Then shortly after calling that out, the Fed launched an emergency meeting with banks to talk about liquidity and the significance of what is going on. No one knows exactly what's going on, but we kind of know what's going on. These likely have correlation, but Bank of Japan is close to raising rates. If you come down and take a look, this was released yesterday. The Bank of Japan is nearing a decision to raise interest rates and will not wait until after next year's spring wage negotiations end. So they're trying to raise interest rates and they're not going to wait. And they said that there's a chance at a December hike, and their meeting is, I believe, on the 9th of December. Oh, policy meeting December 18th and 19th. Okay, so that's when it is. That is when Bank of Japan could raise their rates. What is going to happen on that day of that meeting? Probably nothing. What's going to happen on Monday or coming into that meeting? A lot. Overnight, last night, as well as today, we have seen a lot of wallets moving Bitcoin around. I talked to one of my guys about it, very close friend. A lot of money is being moved around. This could be rebalancing. This could be something else. It could be a nothing burger. But what we do know is that anybody who is involved in the carry trade and the possible unwind of the carry trade will front run it. In other words, the carry trade will need to begin unwinding if this comes to fruition December 18th, 19th, but nobody is going to wait for that. Big money isn't going to wait for that, and there's a lot of money tied up in this. So you have this scenario, and it's a very, very real scenario. People need to come back to reality. There's a lot of money being tied up. Liquidity is thin. The markets are technically in a short-term bearish move down. But there's a couple of technicals that we are going to look at, like this. We saw this huge volume candle on Friday, October 10th, coming all the way down to 653 with no lower wick, absolutely getting a pop shortly after. And then now we saw the same huge volume candle, almost identical to that one, right here on Thursday, November 20th, barely a lower wick. The SPY went from 676 almost down to 652, which is a huge swing in price action. Following that on Friday, we got a nice rebound with a longer upper wick and a longer lower wick with a lot of volume, indicating a little bit of a different story than we saw back here. This indicates indecision, and it also indicates on the second move down, retesting support, which the more you test it, more it gets the more likely it is to be broken. Retesting support, but the main concern is also trading below the 50 moving average, the 50-week moving average, which we haven't seen on the SPY once again until the crash of earlier this year in February. Something very similar is happening in my opinion to banks that we saw back in February 2020 crash. Okay, 2020 crash right here. So in my opinion, we are in a very, very similar setup to that. Now, also take a look at where the SPY rejected off of some of our trend lines. We came perfectly into this liquidity box and we got a bounce, and we perfectly rejected off of this blue ascending resistance level, which was once support. The next big drop has a lot of room to fall, bringing the SPY down sub 640 if we do get that fall. In my opinion, with this reshuffling, we will. We also saw a MACD cross on the weekly time frame on the SPY, and this normally is the beginning of this directional momentum, as well as the RSI rejecting off of the 70, indicating we should see a deeper correction. We should see a deeper correction on the momentum indicators. Everything has faded strength-wise, as well as liquidity concerns along with the banks. As far as this descending channel that we have also been in, you can see that the SPY did get a bounce, but we rejected perfectly off of the midline. There's a couple of things that if you are bullish, if you're holding calls, there's something that you could see on this midline, which is a gap higher, okay, which is what we saw back here. Normally, these lines get rejected hard or they get gapped above, and much so respected. So that would be a very quick move towards 673, 674 before a possible rejection remaining in this channel, or that would just be a gap down on open. And once we break this channel, you're likely going to enter a free fall on the SPY if we break that channel, and I do have a bearish bias. So again, once you break this, you're likely going to enter a free fall on the market. Breaking that would be a very hard break of the floor at 650, which is where we saw that huge those huge volume candles. I assume, even from a trading perspective, a lot of traders will have their stop losses or liquidations below these huge levels, okay, right around that 650 floor where all of that volume comes in. Alongside Bitcoin as well, there's shuffling going on. Spot Bitcoin ETF volume hitting a new all-time high. The ETF average cost basis dropping below the average cost basis, I should say, for the first time in 2025. You could also see a lot of liquidations here. How low can Bitcoin go? We're also trading. We rejected 3 times now, 3 real rejections off of this red zone. Bitcoin has not rallied into it yet this entire cycle, showing, in my opinion, weaker momentum. And I think a big issue is that since the 2021 cycle, if you look at the volume, you have huge volume in all of these cycles, and then right when the 2021 cycle finished, nobody is selling. I think this is a big issue for the diminishing returns and the quote-unquote super cycles, or things that we should see, is that people aren't selling, right? People aren't letting go of their Bitcoin. So we could be seeing a shakeout. We also saw a break below the 50-week moving average, 55-week moving average as well, obviously. And that is never good for Bitcoin. Once we break below that, you're likely to see a bloodbath, which is exactly what we saw for 2022. It's exactly what we saw in 2018. It's exactly what we saw in 2014. So how low will Bitcoin go? In my opinion, if things continue to the downside, we could see a move into this box. This is the ultimate zone that I have drawn out on Bitcoin. How low is that, Lottery Stocks? Well, that is anywhere under 74,000 and above 64,000, which is where I think Bitcoin will bounce and we should see move higher. I also want to reiterate something, is that alongside these diminishing returns and people not selling, I think that the move up isn't as fun. However, the move down also probably won't be as aggressive. Those are just a couple of things that I see. But guys, all of this is so complicated. What is the bigger picture? Please, I can't be right. I can't be wrong every time, right? You have to tell by something. Okay, you have to kind of get a little bit of a perspective as to what is going on, apart from the technicals, apart from all the complications here, apart from all the put options, people letting go, the flow. Listen, what's happening is simple. There was an emergency meeting with the Fed and the banks. There was action in the repo markets. Both of these were very similar to what we saw in 2020 when banks were having liquidity issues. Yet people said it was the COVID crash. Anyone who was deeply entrenched and delved into these markets and were following the channel know that it wasn't because of COVID-19 that the market crashed. So we're seeing signs alongside that. We're also seeing potential overvaluations, people talking about AI bubble, things like that. But these are just the facts that you can't disregard. We're also seeing the carry trade get more and more pressure. There's a lot of money over there. What happens, long story short, we talk about it a lot. US equities will be sold aggressively. And this isn't because technically things are overvalued, but because there is no choice. This will be forced selling, and that is why in 2020 you saw a free fall on the markets. So let me just tell you something. Where will the markets free fall if that is the case? If we break below 648, we're in a bearish territory. If we break below 640, you'll likely enter a free fall. So in my opinion, we are coming into this zone somewhere. If you break below this zone, SPY is likely to enter a free fall towards 620 to 600. Where will things be bullish? Well, if we gap higher and we come to the top of the range at 674, that will be cool, but you could get a rejection anywhere above 674.30 and ultimately 681. If you get above 681 and you start bouncing above 686 and 681, likely the bear market is off, at least for a while, and you could continue higher. If you come into the zone, you still have the possibility of rejecting. If you come into the zone, you still have the possibility of rejecting. Same thing. So map out these levels on your chart. This is just in my opinion. I don't give financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. But the main thing we have to look at, even if you're in a short squeeze play or you're in crypto, is the overall market and these liquidity concerns that are happening. Again, guys, I am just a guy on YouTube. I'm not a financial analyst. I don't have several degrees or anything. We set up levels and we scalp trades in the Discord and we make money, and that's pretty much it. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. Again, it's just my thoughts and opinions. There's 2 links in the description. The top one, join my trading group. That'll take you to my Discord. If you want to join through LaunchPass instead, might be a little easier. That's also right here. Join Discord through LaunchPass, okay? My custom indicator, you can get 7 days for free. Add it to your TradingView charts. And if you want to go follow me on my socials, my link tree is right here. Go follow me over here. That is it, guys. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I love you all. Let's make some money this week. Make sure to please join the Discord if you're not in yet so we can talk together. God bless. Love you all. Lottery Stocks out.